On July 26, 1956, Gamal Abdel Nasser stood before a crowd in Alexandria and turned a speech into a strategic earthquake. The immediate subject was the Suez Canal, a strip of water across Egypt that connected the Mediterranean to the Red Sea. But the deeper subject was who had the right to command the roots, money, and symbols of the post-war world. The central claim of the crisis was simple and explosive. Egypt said sovereignty caused the Canal Company to answer to Cairo, while Britain and France claimed international commerce gave them a right to intervene. Contemporary accounts, company records, and later historians put the decision in a wider context of dam financing, Cold War alignment, anti-colonial evidence, and the aftermath of shrinking European authority. For Britain and France, Suez was not just infrastructure. It was memory, oil, status, and the last visible proof that old empires still had reach. For Nasser, it was Egyptian soil carrying foreign power through the middle of an independent country. The canal had been opened in the 19th century, and for decades it tied Europe to Asia in a way that made geography feel like policy. Ships saved the long voyage around Africa. Oil moved toward Europe. Armies and administrators understood that the waterway could shape war, commerce, and prestige. Egypt, however, had paid a heavy price for that strategic value. British troops had occupied the canal zone, European investors had dominated the company, and Egyptian sovereignty often looked limited precisely where the world most wanted Egyptian territory. Nasser came out of the free officers' movement that overthrew King Farouk in 1952. His revolution promised to end humiliation, remove foreign domination, modernize the state, and speak for a wider Arab world. Those promises needed more than slogans. They needed land reform, industry, electricity, and water control. The Aswan Dam became the practical symbol of that future. If Egypt could build it, the Nile could be regulated, fields could be irrigated, power could be generated, and independence could become something people felt in their homes. At first, the United States and Britain considered helping finance the dam, but aid in the Cold War was never just aid. Washington and London wanted Nasser to fit into their strategic system. Nasser instead tried to remain non-aligned, bargaining with both sides while refusing to become a client. When Egypt bought arms through Czechoslovakia, Western officials read the deal as Soviet influence entering the Middle East. When Nasser recognized communist China and criticized Western alliances, the patience of the funders narrowed. In July 1956, the United States withdrew its offer for the dam, and Britain followed. Nasser's answer was to take the money from the canal. In Alexandria, he invoked Ferdinand de Lesseps, the French builder whose name served as a code signal to Egyptian teams waiting near Suez Canal Company offices. When the word came, Egyptian officials moved to seize control of the company and its installations. The announcement was theatrical, but the operation was practical. Keep the canal running, take the revenues, and show that Egyptians could manage a waterway long described as too important to leave to Egypt. The reaction was immediate because nationalization struck different nerves in different capitals. In Egypt and across much of the Arab world, Nasser appeared to have reclaimed dignity from foreign control. In London, Prime Minister Anthony Eden saw a dangerous challenge to British power and compared Nasser to aggressive nationalist leaders of the recent past. In Paris, leaders viewed Nasser through the war in Algeria, fearing that Egyptian support for anti-colonial movements would strengthen rebels and weaken France's position in North Africa. To them, compromise looked like retreat. What followed was not an unavoidable explosion, but a secret design. At Sevres, representatives of Britain, France, and Israel shaped a plan. Israel would attack Egypt across Sinai. Britain and France would then issue an ultimatum to both sides, demanding withdrawal from the canal area. When Egypt refused terms that would effectively surrender control of its own territory, Britain and France would intervene as if they were peacekeepers protecting international navigation. The plan depended on pretending that the invasion was a response to a crisis, rather than the crisis itself. In late October, Israeli forces entered Sinai and advanced quickly. Britain and France delivered their ultimatum, then attacked Egyptian airfields and landed forces near Port Said. Militarily, the operation had strength. Aircraft, paratroopers, naval power, and trained troops could seize positions. Politically, the operation was disastrous. Egyptians blocked the canal with sunken vessels. Port Said became a symbol of resistance. The supposed defense of free navigation had helped close the very waterway the invaders claimed to protect. The decisive pressure came not only from Cairo or Moscow, but from Washington. President Dwight Eisenhower refused to support the attack. He feared that colonial intervention would damage Western credibility, inflame the Arab world, and hand the Soviet Union a propaganda victory at the same moment Soviet tanks were crushing revolt in Hungary. The United States applied severe financial pressure on Britain, and sterling came under strain. The United Nations moved toward ceasefire and withdrawal, creating the first major United Nations emergency force. The Soviet Union added threats of its own, making the old imperial operation look reckless in a nuclear age. Under this pressure, Britain, France, and Israel stopped. Eden's authority collapsed and he resigned soon afterward. France drew its own lessons, while Israel gained some immediate security arrangements but not the political outcome its partners had imagined. Nasser kept the Canal. That did not make him invincible or solve Egypt's problems, but it made him the central figure of Arab nationalism and a symbol of defiance against European empire. The meaning of July 26, 1956 is therefore larger than one nationalization decree. Suez showed that formal empires could still reach for force, but they could no longer control the world as they once had. American power, Soviet pressure, international institutions, Arab nationalism, oil routes, and mass politics now constrained decisions that London and Paris had once made for themselves. A canal had been taken back by the country through which it ran, and in the struggle that followed, the old imperial order discovered that possession, habit, and prestige were no longer enough.